Ladies and gentlemen, heartbreak doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't ask your permission before tearing through the life you carefully built. And healing, well, healing doesn't look the same for everyone. When a relationship ends, we often hear two versions of the story, his side and her side, not because one is lying, but because love is felt and lost in deeply personal ways. His silence might scream louder than her tears. Her texts at 2 a.m. might be her way of holding on while he's already pretending to move on, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't know how to stay. His side, maybe he felt pressure to be the strong one, to not cry, to carry the weight of expectations while slowly losing parts of himself. Maybe he thought giving space was kindness, that stepping back would let her breathe, but inside he was drowning, caught between pride and pain, unable to say, "I miss you," her side. Maybe she fought harder than he ever knew. Maybe every argument felt like a battle between love and self-worth. Maybe she cried in the shower, whispered prayers into pillows, and finally chose herself, not because she stopped loving him, but because she was tired of proving her pain was real. You see, heartbreak isn't always about who left. It's about what broke. Trust, communication, connection, and healing isn't just about moving on. It's about understanding your side and respecting theirs. We spend so much time asking who was right, but sometimes nobody is right when love gets lost in translation. Sometimes the real story is in the middle, where both sides were hurting and neither knew how to say it. From heartbreak to healing is not a straight line. It's a messy journey filled with relapses, reflections, and revelations. Healing starts the moment we stop blaming, start understanding, and learn to let go, not of the memories, but of the weight they carry. Heartbreak feels different for everyone. There's no universal experience or reaction. Some people collapse the moment the door closes behind someone they loved. Others keep smiling at work, laughing with friends, posting on social media, all while silently carrying the weight of something that's tearing them apart inside. The truth is, heartbreak doesn't come in one shape. For some, it's loud and chaotic. For others, it's quiet and suffocating. It can hit all at once like a wave or sneak in slowly, like a shadow that grows a little longer each day. One person might drown in tears and old text messages, while another deletes every trace and acts like nothing ever happened. But the pain still lingers, just in different forms. Society often tells us how we should react, assigning timelines and stereotypes. Men are expected to be strong, emotionless, to just move on. Women are often seen as overly emotional, clinging too long to what's lost, but these assumptions only deepen the wounds. Every heart carries its own history, its own triggers, its own hopes. One breakup can feel like freedom to one person and like death to another. Some mourn the loss of a future they imagined. Others grieve the version of themselves they became with that person. And while outsiders try to make sense of who's coping better or who's at fault, they forget that heartbreak is not a performance. It doesn't need an audience or a verdict. It's personal, it's raw, and it doesn't always look like pain. Sometimes it looks like laughter that's a little too loud or silence that lasts a little too long. Sometimes it's in the way someone avoids certain songs or avoids looking at their own reflection because it reminds them of who they were when they were loved. His side may be silent suffering, masked by pride and emotional restraint. From a distance, he might look like he's doing fine, posting pictures, hanging out with friends, cracking jokes like nothing ever happened. But what people don't see is the weight he's carrying in the quiet moments. He scrolls through old messages late at night, stares at her last text, wondering if he should respond, even though he knows he won't. He replays conversations in his mind, trying to pinpoint the moment things began to fall apart. He tells himself to be strong, that it's better this way, that moving on quickly is the only way to protect himself. But deep down, he's still searching for answers he'll never ask for. He was taught not to cry, not to break, not to show weakness, so instead he bottles everything up, burying his feelings beneath layers of distraction. Work, workouts, new connections that never quite feel the same. He might pretend it was mutual, say it wasn't that deep, but inside there's a voice that whispers otherwise. The pride he clings to is a shield, not because he doesn't feel, but because he feels too much and doesn't know what to do with it. The silence isn't indifference, it's fear of vulnerability, fear of admitting that he's hurting too. He remembers the small things, the way she laughed when she was tired, the weird names they had for each other, the little routines that now feel like ghosts. But instead of talking about it, he shrugs it off when his friends ask. He might even start convincing himself that he's better off now, even though part of him still checks her profile, still notices when she's online, still wonders if she's thinking about him the way he thinks about her when everything else goes quiet. Her side may be emotional exhaustion, hidden behind strength and survival. She's the one who tried to hold it all together, even when everything was falling apart. She gave second chances, stretched her patience, stayed up late trying to fix what felt broken. She questioned herself constantly, wondering if she was too much or not enough. On the outside, she looked fine, composed, calm, resilient. But behind that appearance was a girl who cried quietly in bathrooms, who replayed every argument, every silence, every moment she wished she had spoken up or walked away sooner. She loved deeply, and when it ended, it wasn't just the relationship she lost. It was the version of herself she had built around that love. She tried to keep her world spinning while her heart was breaking, showing up for others, smiling at the right moments, pretending to be okay. But the emotional weight never left. It showed up in the way she overanalyzed text messages, in the way she avoided certain songs, in the way she checked his status even when she promised herself she wouldn't. She didn't want to be labeled dramatic or needy, so she kept it inside, journaling her pain instead of voicing it, clinging to quiet strength instead of asking for help. She had hoped he would notice when her energy shifted, when her laughter didn't reach her eyes, when her patience turned to distance. But sometimes the strongest people are the ones who break quietly. She wasn't looking for a perfect partner, just someone who noticed her effort, someone who stayed consistent, someone who made her feel like she didn't have to earn love by sacrificing herself. In the end, she chose herself, not because she stopped loving him, but because loving him started to feel like losing pieces of who she really was. Both sides often fail to communicate pain in ways the other can understand. One thinks silence is safer, the other believes words are the only way to connect. While one withdraws to process in solitude, the other reaches out, needing reassurance. He might think walking away gives her peace, not realizing it feels like abandonment. She might think confronting the issues brings clarity, not realizing it feels like pressure. The language of pain is rarely spoken fluently between two people who are hurting in different ways. They misinterpret each other's actions, assuming intention behind things that were simply unspoken needs. One unread message becomes a sign of indifference. One delayed reply feels like rejection. Instead of saying, "I'm scared," it becomes, "I'm done." Instead of, "I still care," it becomes, "I need space." And in that gap between what is felt and what is said, love slowly unravels. Miscommunication doesn't always come from not trying. It comes from trying in ways that don't translate. A person who grew up suppressing emotion won't understand why expressing every feeling matters so much. A person who found safety in words won't understand why shutting down feels like control, not calm. Each side brings their own history, their own scars, their own definitions of love and fear. But instead of meeting in the middle, they often retreat to their corners, hoping the other will figure it out. Pride gets in the way. Ego takes over. They both want the same thing to be seen, heard, understood. But they go about it in opposite ways. And as they keep missing each other emotionally, they begin to believe the other person doesn't care, when in reality, they're just lost in their own version of hurt, hoping someone will decode what they're too afraid to say out loud. Healing begins when blame ends and empathy starts, for yourself. And for them, it's easy to point fingers after the damage is done, to replay every moment where someone failed you and build walls out of resentment. It's easier to say they changed than to admit we grew apart. But healing isn't about proving who was right or who tried harder. It's about understanding that both people were doing the best they could with the tools they had at the time. Sometimes the love was real, but the timing wasn't. Sometimes the effort was there, but the communication broke down. And sometimes two good people simply couldn't meet each other's emotional needs, no matter how badly they wanted to. The path to healing is messy, filled with moments where the anger feels safer than the sadness, and where remembering the bad makes it easier to forget the good. But real healing begins when you can hold both truths, when you can see your own mistakes without shame and see theirs without hatred. It means recognizing the version of yourself that tolerated too much or gave too little and choosing to grow from it rather than punish yourself for it. It means letting go of the fantasy that closure will come from their apology and instead finding it in your own acceptance. When empathy takes the place of blame, you begin to soften toward the pain rather than fighting it. You start understanding that they may have hurt you, but they were also hurting, that they may have let go not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know how to stay. You begin to forgive, not because they earned it, but because you deserve peace. And slowly, your heart makes room for something new, not to replace the love that ended, but to honor the lessons it left behind.